I knew something was wrong the moment my key stopped working. For 25 years, I had unlocked that office every morning. But that Monday I stood outside the company I had helped build. And my key wouldn't turn. Then one of my employees opened the door and stared at me like I wasn't supposed to be there. "Denise, what are you doing here?" I laughed nervously. "What do you mean? I work here." Her face went pale. "They told us you retired Friday." I hadn't retired. I hadn't sold my half of the company. And I hadn't signed a single document. Then I looked past her. My best friend and business partner of 25 years was standing inside my office, behind my desk. And that's when I realized someone hadn't just changed the locks. She had been trying to erase me. Her name was Patricia. And before I tell you what she did, you need to understand why it hurt so much. I met Patricia when I was 29. We were two black women working administrative jobs in Atlanta, trying to build better lives. I was divorced and raising my 8-year-old daughter. Patricia was single, ambitious, and fearless. We became inseparable. She sat beside me at my mother's funeral. When her father became sick, I drove her to the hospital in the middle of the night. We celebrated birthdays and holidays together. I didn't introduce Patricia as my business partner. I called her my sister. Then one night, sitting at my kitchen table, we came up with an idea. We would start our own corporate event planning company. We had 2 folding tables, 1 old computer, a printer that barely worked, and more confidence than money. The first year almost broke us. But slowly 1 client became 3. 3 became 10. Eventually we rented an office and hired employees. 20 years later, we were running a successful company. And through everything, Patricia and I had one rule. 50-50. Equal partners. At least, that's what I thought. About a year before I found myself locked outside my own office, Patricia started changing. Not enough for me to become suspicious. Just enough for me to notice. She started taking meetings without me. When I asked about them, she'd smile. "Nothing important, Denise. I handled it." Then she began asking for financial reports she'd never cared about before. She also started encouraging me to work less. "You've earned it," she'd say. "Go enjoy your granddaughter. Let me handle things here." And I believed her. I was 61. My daughter was grown, and for the first time in decades, I wanted a little space in my life. So occasionally I left early on Fridays. Sometimes I worked from home. What I didn't know was that every time I stepped away, Patricia was creating a story about me. A story where I was tired, disengaged, ready to leave. She wasn't helping me enjoy my life. She was teaching everyone else how to imagine the company without me. That Monday morning, Patricia looked at me from the doorway of my own office. "Denise, come into the conference room. We need to talk." Before following her, I looked inside. My photographs were gone. My mother's picture that had sat on my desk for 15 years? Gone. My certificates? Gone. Even the coffee mug my daughter gave me was missing. Someone had cleared 25 years of my life out of that room over a weekend. Inside the conference room was a folder. Patricia pushed it toward me. "I think this transition will be easier if we don't make it ugly." "What transition?" She sighed. "Denise, everybody knows you've been pulling away. Working from home twice a week isn't retirement. The company needs leadership that's fully present." I stared at her. "Are you trying to fire me from my own company?" Patricia shook her head. "I'm giving you an opportunity to leave with dignity." Then she opened the folder. And suddenly I understood how long she'd been planning this. I wish I could tell you I walked out feeling powerful. I didn't. I sat in my car in my driveway for almost 40 minutes. I kept thinking about everything I'd sacrificed. Weekends, birthdays, evenings with my daughter, 25 years of my life. And now my closest friend was trying to convince everyone that I'd simply become too old to matter. But later that night, sadness turned into something useful. I remembered something about Patricia. She loved digital records. I loved paper. So I opened the closet in my home office. There were boxes inside that I hadn't touched in years. Contracts, bank documents, tax records, meeting notes, partnership agreements. At almost 2 in the morning I found it. Our original agreement. 50-50 ownership. And Patricia couldn't simply remove me because she wanted to. Then I found an amendment we'd both signed years earlier. Certain ownership changes required both signatures. I stared at Patricia's signature at the bottom. She had forgotten about it. I hadn't. The next morning I called an attorney. My attorney. And then I became very quiet. For 2 weeks I stayed away from the office. Patricia thought I'd surrendered. Employees were told I'd decided to embrace retirement. Clients received messages thanking me for 25 years of service. Then Patricia did something I still can't believe. She organized my retirement celebration without asking me. And then she invited me. The invitation read, "Celebrating Denise Carter, 25 years of leadership." I stared at that invitation for a long time. Patricia wasn't just removing me. She wanted me to attend my own erasure and smile while everyone applauded. But by then my attorney had reviewed the records. And Patricia had a serious problem. I still owned half the company. I had never approved a retirement. I had never authorized her to speak for me. And the document she needed to force me out simply didn't exist. So I decided to attend the party. Not to cause a scene. Not to scream. I was going because there was one thing Patricia had spent almost a year hiding from everyone. The truth. That evening, I walked into the ballroom wearing my favorite black dress. The room went quiet for a moment. Patricia's expression changed the second she saw me. But then she smiled. Employees hugged me. Clients congratulated me. And that's when I realized most of them genuinely believed retirement had been my decision. Eventually, Patricia walked onto the stage. She talked about our journey, our friendship, our sacrifices. Then she called me the sister I never had. I almost couldn't believe it. Finally, she invited me onto the stage. She hugged me for everyone to see, then whispered into my ear, "Please don't embarrass yourself." I smiled. She handed me the microphone. I looked around the room. Then I said, "Thank you all for coming tonight. There's just one problem." Silence. "I'm not retiring." Patricia's smile disappeared. I never announced my retirement. I never sold my ownership. And I never authorized anyone to speak on my behalf. People began looking toward Patricia. Then I said the words I'd spent weeks preparing myself to say. You can replace someone's office furniture. You can remove their photographs. But you cannot erase 25 years of their work. I handed Patricia the microphone and walked off that stage. The legal battle lasted several months. There wasn't some dramatic courtroom confession. There were lawyers, documents, negotiations, and uncomfortable conversations. But paperwork doesn't care who tells the better story. Our records showed that I still owned 50%. The so-called retirement had no legal foundation. Several employees eventually admitted they'd been given misleading information about my intentions. Patricia now had a choice. Continue fighting and potentially damage the company we'd both built. Or negotiate with me fairly. She chose negotiation. Eventually, Patricia agreed to buy my share. Not for the insulting amount she'd originally expected me to accept. For its actual negotiated value. Months later, we sat across from each other in an attorney's office. She signed. I signed. Then Patricia looked at me and asked, "Was it worth destroying our friendship over this?" I couldn't believe she said it. I looked at the woman I'd once called my sister. "Patricia, I didn't destroy our friendship." I picked up my bag. I just stopped allowing our friendship to be used against me. And I walked out. 3 years have passed. Patricia still runs the company. And no, I don't spend my days hoping she fails. Because I learned something about karma. Karma doesn't always mean watching someone lose everything. Sometimes karma is simply making sure they don't get to keep what they tried to take from you. And here's the ironic part. Eventually, I really did retire. But this time nobody made the decision for me. I travel. I spend Wednesdays with my granddaughter. And I mentor young Black women who want to build businesses of their own. Sometimes I sit on my porch with my morning coffee and remember that Monday when my key wouldn't turn. At the time, I thought that locked door represented everything I was losing. Now I see it differently. It was the door that finally pushed me toward the next chapter of my life. But there's one lesson I carried with me. Betrayal doesn't always come from an enemy. Sometimes it comes from someone who knows exactly how hard you worked. Because they were standing right beside you while you did it. And if someone ever asks you to make yourself smaller so they can take up more space, Don't mistake that for friendship. I spent 25 years building that company. But the most valuable things I walked away with weren't sitting inside that office. They were my name, my dignity, and the knowledge that nobody gets to decide when my story is over. Except me.